Hello, I am Cody Ellingham, and this is the Transformation of Value, a place for asking questions about freedom, money, and creativity. On a rainy Friday evening in Tokyo, I sat with around 40 people at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan for the annual Freedom of the Press Awards. I lingered at the back as an interloper, trying to imagine myself amongst this media world. I mingled with sprightly young reporters from Reuters and the Japan Times and the slightly more weathered editorial team of the Akahata newspaper, the official daily rag of the Japan Communist Party, who had won the Freedom of the Press Award. In an interesting turn of events, Akahata, which means red flag in Japanese, were the first publication to break the story of the Liberal Democratic Party's political funding scandal, which eventually led to a major shake-up of the Japanese government. Despite my ongoing critiques of communist ideology, it was a privilege to be able to have a chit-chat and a sober chuckle with the Akahata gentlemen as we discussed what was happening in Japan. I congratulated them on taking on the government when the only sounds emerging from other domestic media was of sucking air. Opening remarks by Freedom of the Press Committee co-chairs David McNeil and Ilgen Yorumaz pulled no punches in highlighting that more journalists were killed in 2024 than in any other year since the Committee to Protect Journalists began monitoring 30 years ago. At least 124 journalists and media workers were killed last year, nearly two-thirds of them Palestinians. For 2025, the toll looks like it may be even higher. The keynote speech was delivered by Irene Khan, UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of the right to freedom of opinion and expression. She mentioned something in particular that stayed with me. The murder of a journalist is the most egregious form of censorship. I reflect on those who seek to challenge power structures through journalism, whistleblowing and commentary, but also the work that many are undertaking in building censorship-resistant tools, communities and infrastructure, whether on Bitcoin or encrypted messaging technologies such as Nostr and Signal. Among the other award winners, we heard from Ishimaru Jiro, who won the Lifetime Achievement Award for his work reporting on North Korea for over 30 years via Asia Press International, as well as In-Depth Solomons, who have been covering the political situation in the Solomon Islands. The Honorary Japan Award for Freedom of the Press went to Hiroshima Peace Media Center, and MBC won the Asia Press Freedom Award for their reportage on the martial law situation in South Korea last year. But again, what is my role in all of this? These stories of integrity and courage are really about individuals within these media institutions. It does not extinguish my own critique and sometimes contempt for the organization of media over recent years. I have seen firsthand how institutional journalism of accreditation of bureaus and press passes can, instead of chasing after freedom, actually walk hand in hand with the very power of the state. It was the Akahata newspaper, the outsiders, who broke the Japanese political funding story because domestic media was already too intimate with the government. Japanese mainstream media tends towards self-censorship and covets its exclusive press access and relationships. But is this much different than even in my own humble country of New Zealand? The political capture of New Zealand's small media landscape is a travesty, and I see the financial collapse of this cabal as the only way through which reform and a return to truth-seeking is even possible. Is this an endemic issue with the media, I wonder? There are editorial structures and chains of command and financial incentives within media organizations. Does this necessarily lead to capture and erosion of integrity over time? On the other hand, rejecting the integrity of the media outright leads to a kind of spiral into darkness that I have witnessed amongst some of my own associates. Indeed, there is a kind of meta gameplay that seeks to confuse and distort the very idea of truth itself or of the knowability of reality. I know people who are unable to trust anything, They have become the ultimate cynics who in turn arrive at a place of nothing but pure memes, of unbridled skepticism, and ultimately of detachment from the very reality to which they pledge allegiance. Upon mentioning my own admiration for the kind of courage it takes for a journalist to report on places like Xinjiang in Western China or North Korea, they simply confront me and ask, but why do these journalists even care so much? What is in it for them? As if there is some kind of psychological operation or conspiracy that must underpin every single thing. I don't know. I am still extremely critical and wary of institutions and centralized organizations. The media's celebration of some topics and deafening silence on others, its manufacture of consensus and narratives are all red flags for me. But ironically, it was Akahata, the red flag newspaper of the Communist Party of Japan, that broke the political funding scandal. If a hardened communist newspaper can take on the power of the Japanese government, then good on them. I think this push and pull is important. The ongoing critique and monitoring and vigilance is essential, no matter who is doing it. The institution of legacy media may be bleeding out before our eyes, but what will replace it? The fabled rise of AI slop and dead internet echo chambers tickles the God complex of the technocracy, but fundamentally the machine cannot know reality. They cannot infer the complex interplay of relationships and the very nature of the political, which is, of course, distinctly human and of the moment. What happened yesterday and today? What does it mean for us? I wonder if also, in a sense, organizations and large media companies are in the same predicament. Maybe it is the individuals and the independents who will continue this journalistic work. I am inspired by the caliber of people like those who were recognized for their work last night at the Freedom of the Press Awards, willing and able to smuggle old cell phones into North Korea and navigate the narrow border along the Yalu River to get any kind of reception from the Hermit Kingdom, of standing their ground against the military and the martial law in Seoul, of bringing light to political corruption and the excesses of the state wherever it may sprout. After the awards, I joined the others at the bar, again as an interloper. Eric Johnston, senior national correspondent for the Japan Times, stood and proposed a toast to freedom of the press. But it was not expensive wine or champagne that everyone held up in honour, but simply glasses of ice water. Thank you for listening. I am Cody Ellingham, and this is The Transformation of Value, exploring freedom, money, and creativity.